When we started making the logbooks back in 2019, we just wanted to hear the stories of LGBTQ plus people all across Britain. But we didn't realise that we were actually building a community of listeners. So we wanted to say thank you for listening to us and with us. It means so much to us.
For just £4 a month on our Patreon now, that's only £1 per episode, you can get all episodes of the logbooks ad-free, and you'll also join our inner circle, so you get to hear what we're thinking about and how we're planning the episodes. You get to chat with us about what might be coming up in the episodes, and it also continues to support us such that we can keep all the main episodes on the main feed for free for everyone all the time. So just go to patreon.com/AuntNell.
There are moments that reveal who we are and who we're meant to become. For those born to lead, such moments call for a vehicle of equal distinction. Dynamic by design, uncompromising in execution, the Range Rover Sport was engineered for those rare individuals who demand the world and possess the conviction to claim it. When your time to lead arrives, you need a vehicle that rises to meet it. The Range Rover Sport. Exclusive offers available now. Explore further at rangerover.com.
Let's be honest. If you have a cat, you've probably wondered what your house smells like before guests walk in. Thankfully, Arm & Hammer Cat Litter helps take that worry off your plate. Because not all litters are the same. Arm & Hammer Hardball Cat Litter gives you long-lasting odor control, plus strong clumps that make scooping quick and easy, with low dust, too. It's a 5-in-1 litter made for busy people, helping your home stay fresher every day so you can feel confident opening the door for family and friends. Candles? Air fresheners? Not needed here. Odor control is Arm & Hammer Cat Litter's job, not yours. Be guest ready with Arm & Hammer Hardball Cat Litter. Find it now at Walmart or Amazon.
Oh, no.
Adam, I've got an update for you.
Oh, great. Is it about the tree?
It's about the tree. The sycamore tree at the end of the garden behind mine.
Yeah.
That I put in a petition to protect with the council. It has been protected. The protection order is in place. And I'm over the moon. It makes me so happy because of all the birds and wildlife that live in there.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Huge.
It shows you that, like in local councils, especially when the Green Mayor has been just selected in Hackney, you can really protect nature, which is so important right now. And the other morning I was in my garden and I realised that the sycamore tree had gifted me this beautiful clump of seeds that were all tied together still and just on my table. So obviously I see meaning in everything and took this as a thank you. Yeah. And I've dried it and it's now hanging up in my kitchen on a green piece of string.
Oh, lovely. Well, thanks to the sycamore. You're listening to The Logbooks.
We are Tash Walker
and Adam Zmith.
And these are the stories of our lives. What's the story today, Adam?
The story is that reform-led councils up and down the UK are trying to restrict LGBTQ plus books in libraries, and they're also have been removing pride flags from like city halls and county halls and stuff like that. And so I think it's worthwhile just kind of like telling the world that this is happening really. Like we were in Norwich back in July, and this had just been happening at that time, that there was like pressure on the local library from the council, but then the council was also saying there's no policy change. So it's all a bit messy.
There's a lot of confusion, wasn't there? I remember that,
Yeah. But one thing that was clear was that there was not going to be a pride flag flown over the City Hall anymore. And the council is trying to say neutral, that like there's just going to be like no flags, no flags basically, that single like one group or another. So it's obviously it's the symbolism, the visibility is important to talk about, but it's also makes you think like, okay, if it's flags, if it's books, then
what next?
It's deeper than that, What next, exactly. So it's worth flagging that.
Yeah. Nice. Unintended pun.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Let's have a little break.
Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. That's why a State Farm agent is there to help you choose a coverage option that's right for you. Whether you're getting a new house, car, boat, or RV, helping protect it is important. And State Farm is there to help you choose the coverage you need. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app. And with so many coverage options, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. So you can continue to focus on what's most important to you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The more you listen to your kids, the closer you'll be. So we asked kids, what do you want your parents to hear?
I feel sometimes that I'm not listened to. I would just want you to listen to me more often and evaluate situations with me and lead me towards success.
Listening is a form of love. Find resources to help you support your kids and their emotional well-being at sounditouttogether.org. That's sounditouttogether.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Pivotal.
There are moments that reveal who we are and who we're meant to become. For those born to lead, such moments call for a vehicle of equal distinction. Dynamic by design, uncompromising in execution, the Range Rover Sport was engineered for those rare individuals who demand the world and possess the conviction to claim it. When your time to lead arrives, you need a vehicle that rises to meet it. The Range Rover Sport. Exclusive offers available now. Explore further at rangerover.com.
Tash, what have we got in this episode's Messy Middle?
Well, I'm really excited to bring you Alice Hattrick, who you know as well, Adam. But they have recently brought out a book called Fancy Work, which is excellent. I read it a while back, absolutely loved it, and asked if I could interview them. They said yes. So I jumped on my bike and I zoomed round their house, which was brilliant because, as you can imagine, it's full of things that have been collected from nature and from the beaches and woods. Like, you know how like I've got twigs and shells everywhere. It's sort of a similar
similar
version
vibe in
of that.
Alice's house.
Yeah, and I love going into people's houses because they're like museums of the people that are within it.
So what is Fancy Work about this new book from Alice?
Getting distracted.
I mean, Alice is an amazing writer, so I'm going to read anything that they write.
Well, I won't talk too much about the detail of it because, of course, we go into a lot in it, in the interview that you'll hear. There's a couple of things that I became really intrigued by. Fancy Work is the name, and you'll hear Alice talk about this, is the name given to embroidery a while back. So something that is unnecessary. Mm-hmm. And Alice really does this incredible deep dive into the roots of embroidery and stitching and textiles. I get really into the idea of backstitching and the importance of this. Mm-hmm. But as part of this wider story, Alice digs back into other parts of history. Mm-hmm. Looking at prominent characters within the textile world, but not through the lens that you would imagine. So William Morris is a very famous textile designer, poet, artist, writer, social activist.
He's got those sort of fancy, I'm going to say fancy again, like the fancy like leaves and flowers wallpaper.
Yeah,
That's
it's really iconic.
Thing.
It's super iconic, exactly. Really big with the British arts and crafts movement.
Yeah.
But actually, Alice doesn't go through William. Mm. What they do is they go into May Morris.
Okay.
And May Morris is William Morris's daughter. Right. And Alice tracks the journey and the story of them alongside their long-standing companion. And I'll let Alice tell you more about that. But what I loved about what Alice did with the book is weave, and it's so easy to make puns with this because of how they write. Yep. They weave back and forth and stitch all of these different parts of stories globally, not just here in the UK, around the power of protest and stories through thread and needle and banners and ways in which people quietly often claim their stories and stitch them into the wider tapestry of history, but it so often goes unnoticed. And so Fancy Work is a really fantastic way to sort of represent that and put it onto the bookshelves. And actually, before Alice and I start talking, you hear them reading a segment from the book.
Okay.
And yeah, I was really obsessed with this idea of May Morris and their partner, who is called MF. And so I asked Alice to read this part, which helps to recharacterise MF's identity.
Great.
In her biography of May and her mother Jane, Jan Marsh writes that it is not perverse to interpret the relationship between May and Mary Lobb as lesbian in essence. Nevertheless, she insists they wouldn't have had sex because of their age, seeing as May was 55 when she met MF, who was in her 40s. Even if May was queer, Marsh insists, we can still look at her work and find it interesting without taking her sexuality into account, citing lesbian friendships of well-known authors such as Vita Sackville-West and Radcliffe Hall. As a historian, you are supposed to keep queer identity away from the work itself, which is already deemed less important if it's made in textiles and designed for the most feminine of places, the home. In the 1980s, May's biographer might have argued that you can still appreciate her impact and influence as an artist, regardless of her lesbianism, but this has continued over the decades. MF found their place with May, where their labour and laughter were valued. In many ways, MF was an unsanctioned land girl at Kelmscott, successfully swaying some people's opinions regarding social norms and values about women agriculturalists, who also cultivated meaningful and lifelong friendships with those people already caring for the land, and created a stronger connection between the urban and rural. During the Great War and afterwards, May looked after local people, plants, and wildlife. She sewed shirts for soldiers on Wednesdays and dug up the potatoes she planted around the village. She gave out coal to the villagers in the winter and organised a Christmas tree and party for the children. In keeping with her father's instructions, May and MF lived at Kelmscott without electricity and running water. And MF looked after May, meaning they were more than a couple, they were part of a community. MF cared for the place itself, the garden, the cooking, but mainly MF cared for May. I wanted to know what would happen if we called MF genderqueer and May bisexual. What narratives about design, about home and domestic relationships this recategorizing might destabilize. May knew MF as MF, not Mary Frances. Others in their circle referred to MF as Miss MVF Lob, kind soul, the Cornish hermaphrodite, or just Lob. The name MF does not disclose a particular gender. Their shared first initial joins them together, signalling an affection, a bond, a union. Like May, who referred to herself as MM, I use MF. I do this because May did, and because of what its neutrality confers beyond the binary gender categories available at the time. MF's gender presentation is not clear-cut. MF wore their hair cropped short, worked outside, and dressed in masculine clothing. I use they-them pronouns when referring to MF, even if May and her contemporaries use she-her, because this gesture opens the possibility of a queer gender. They-them acknowledges the presence of ambiguity, drawing attention to not knowing rather than erasing possibilities. I want to do this out of respect for MF, about whom I have read both kind words and, in my interpretation, malicious slurs. But mostly I do this for other non-binary and trans people, who do not only want to see themselves in the past, but imagine themselves a future. Our interpretation of history is not for the benefit of the dead, but the living, which includes queer people. The fear of erroneously describing a straight, cisgendered person as queer is rooted in queerphobia and shame. We are not rewriting history, we are acknowledging its hold over us to see how we might live and write in the future. As Adrienne Rich taught us, revision means letting go of the past. In her essay titled When We Dead Awaken, Rich writes of the importance of the act of looking back, of seeing with fresh eyes, of entering a text from a new critical direction, examining how language both traps and liberates women. Revision is for us more than a chapter in cultural history. It's an act of survival. We revision rather than correct or fix. Through revision, we are not looking for ourselves in the past. We are breaking the hold it has over us. In the face of administrative efforts to erase selective aspects of the queer and trans past, revision enables us to imagine a future that is open and transgressive, to envision a future that includes us all.
Alice, thank you so much for inviting me to your home, which is so amazing and actually covered with tiny things and things from nature and leaves that are framed and your lovely cats with Inca over there. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very good. I think he's going to catch the fly, which is quite handy. It's flying around, so he's on that.
Yeah, we've got Inca on the fly. It's so nice to be here. Did you? Yeah, you were living here as you were writing the book. Partway through, you moved here, right? Or
yeah, I was living when I started working on the book. I was living in a kind of temporary house, not my own house, and I was meant to be there for a few months, and I stayed for a few years. It was during kind of lockdowns and that pandemic time. And that's kind of when I started working on the book. I so finished Ill Feelings at that time. And then I got really interested in how I was living on my own, kind of remaking my life in a way that I hadn't really expected. And I did that a lot through making things, and I got really into sewing and embroidery and quilting, piecing, and collecting plants and dyeing with them, making pigments with them. And I kind of, I was trying to kind of work out how to live like independently. And then I met my partner, and she moved in. And it was then that I started thinking, like, how do I make a life with her, or how do I make a kind of more permanent home, a more fixed home, and a more fixed kind of self, I guess, and how you have to be in relation to someone else, or, you know, that constant state of like becoming or remaking is kind of reached its kind of conclusion in a way. But I was working on the book the whole kind of time, I guess. And then we moved here kind of this time last year.
okay.
So most of the book had been done by then, but I finished it here. I kind of did the last edit here. And now here we are.
I kind of love that. It's like, thank you for explaining it in that way. It's nice. It's like, the book is, like, I love the idea of becoming. I really believe in that constant evolution and shaping of oneself with those that we surround ourselves, whether that's lovers, partners, friendships, nature, trees, leaves, all of those things. And this book being a quest for understanding how to become and to continue becoming, and it ends with you finishing it in this house, which is like the next stage. So it's really lovely to be here, and I really loved the book. I enjoyed it so much. I was just saying to you before I started recording about like how it sent my brain in like a million different directions, and took me to places I hadn't thought about, or a new angle on things. And I think it's like so hard to not like, it's like so easy to do unintentional puns with this book, like how you weave in so many of these stories and fragments and moments. It's so deftly done, and like it's great because it feels like I didn't find it hard to hold in my head as you were drawing all of these threads in together, which of course is what a tapestry would be, or like anything that we make and create. It holds all of those threads, and you are able to see them in individual parts, but actually when you piece them all together like you do in the book in Fancy Work, it has this whole wider meaning that's made up of all of those parts. And I really got that from it. So you sort of touched on it then when you were talking about like embroidery and starting to embroider. And I feel like the way that you write in this book is very connected to nature. I can see also, so are you, and your house and your garden, but not always like it doesn't always feel made from nature, but with nature. Like it feels quite seasonal, sensory and responsive. So I was wondering like what drew you to embroidery, because, and in that sense, how you then integrated embroidery with nature.
So because I started this kind of practice of going outside and collecting things and figuring out, what we can extract from them, but not in a way that is, there's this kind of inevitable destruction that happens with, trying to make a dye out of a plant. And there are obviously very extractive histories of around nature. So it's kind of trying to figure out, how we navigate that too, like how we live with nature, as you say, rather than try and take from it. So that was that's kind of what I was thinking about a lot in my kind of daily life. But then I ended up with all these kind of pieces of fabric that were dyed, and that I was, I wanted to make something from them. So it was kind of like inevitable that I would sew into them or piece them, cut them up and piece them together to make things. But in doing that, I was also thinking about it kind of ended up being a way of thinking about life writing effectively. And I thought about, how we write about our own lives, and how we write about the lives of people in the past, particularly queer people in the past, where we don't have a lot of the material traces of those lives. So as I was piecing and I was kind of working with these scraps and making things just to kind of explore those ideas materially, I was also thinking in my research and my writing practice how we can kind of piece together the lives of queer people in the past when we only have these scraps and these fragments. And what stories we can tell with fragments and with scraps. But also the stories we can tell when there aren't, when things have been lost or degraded or, held back somehow or hidden somehow, or maybe they just don't exist. So what we go on is these more ephemeral feelings about the past. So that's how I was kind of thinking through textile practice, but writing through textile practice as well.
Yes, and I think that what you were saying then makes me think about how as queer people or any, oppressed community whose stories are who have been put to the side or censored or hidden or whatever, that we look for ourselves in so many places, right? And how that could be in the idea of a tree in someone's garden and thinking of them walking around that tree or being sat underneath the tree, and how the tree holds a part of them now that then lives on after they've died, and all of these sorts of things. And so there's something about, a very gentle way of finding our stories and our histories within what is given here, which is nature, and less in the sort of capital H history way of finding things, because it's not there, it's not been written in. I want to talk about the title of the book, Fancy Work. I didn't know about it being a term that was historically used to dismiss embroidery, right? As it feels dismissive, yes, as decorative and unnecessary, which is what you speak about in the book. But you turn that, I really like that you call it fancy work, and I really like how you play with that throughout the book. There's this thread that you're turning that completely on its head through so many incredible stories that you tell us about people who have used embroidery or stitching in all of these really important ways, including your mum, and you reclaim it, I suppose, could be a way of speaking about it. But I want to know how you feel about it now, having written the book around that, and it being a very clear entry point, right, for us as a reader.
Yeah, it was kind of always going to be called that it was interesting actually, and it's just reminded me that I think it was Adam who said that would be a really good title, and it was like on Instagram or something as well. He just like messaged me being like, "That's a great title," and I was like, "Okay, that's the title. Like that's the book." I can't even remember what it was like in response to, but you know, like it kind of is a great title, and I do really like titles. I like these, like Ill Things was always called Ill Things from the beginning, and yeah, this idea of fancy work, it's like a, you know, it feels like this contrast between something unnecessary of like fancy and then something that we necessarily have to do or in work, and also labor that's unnecessary, being this having this potential for something more than the necessary, as in like it has this political like power. That's what it felt like to me anyway, that this was work that we don't need to do, and this is work like either just for ourselves or it's work for a more collective body, you know. So to go into the history like of what fancy work is, like in the Victorian period really is where fancy work or embroidery becomes this like very feminine, associated with the feminine and with the domestic and with kind of confining women of different classes. So this is fancy work was only really done by like upper class, like upper middle class women, and for working class women they had to learn all the like sensible, useful stitches. They couldn't really do this kind of fanciful kind of like hobby. Effectively they were being trained to work in the domestic, you know, work for you know, someone else's home and family, so they would need to learn all the sewing that they would do to look after all the clothes and the fabrics in the home for someone else. But this is where, like, I mean, Rosika Parker, the subversive stitch, like she kind of told this whole history as part of you know, second wave feminist art history. So this is kind of like what we know about embroidery, that, you know, it was only really in the 19th century that these associations were, of what we know of now, that's where they were all made. But before, in earlier centuries, which is really where May Morris was looking, as all the Morris, you know, the whole Morris family and the arts and crafts movement in general, they were kind of looking back to these medieval histories or these earlier histories where craft and making was actually not gendered female. It was, you know, done by men and women, and it was also really had this kind of political power. It was much more about like memorializing, and embroidery was, you know, high art. It was as important as painting or anything, you know, anything else that was that the church or you know, the monarchy could kind of use to express their power and their status. That wasn't, you know, that's a kind of necessary thing, you know, like it's fancy work in that sense, but it also has this huge role that is very public and is really significant, I guess. So that's what they were looking back to, and away from this, and that's why I kind of wanted to explore this idea of like embroidery being like ungendered or like detached from this kind of feminine association, and like what would happen if we kind of explored it as this kind of so great.
Well, I it's making me think, and I hadn't really made this connection when I was reading the book, but I'm wondering about obviously I understand the drive to do that, to go back into history, but I'm wondering about like how much of that was driven or maybe because of your own gender and your experience of that, and wanting to look back and see something that you could connect to as part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. So, even though I was like making all this stuff and I was like doing embroidery, which it feels like still really associated with those 19th century gendered norms. Looking back to this like, I guess just the practice of looking back and kind of imagining or speculating on, like a non-binary person making embroidery in the medieval period was just like really, just exciting to me. And I just really wanted to do that, basically. I think because the way, obviously, Mae Morris was not non-binary, but the way that she kind of looked back to these pasts where embroidery wasn't attached to one gender or another, it kind of allowed me to explore that possibility.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Also, I want to like note for the listeners the smile that came on your face when you talked about looking back at how a non-binary person would have made embroidery, and that's so exciting to witness. I feel it too, like so much of the language that expands around our gender identity that we are able to like hold a bit tighter now wasn't there. But of course, like these feelings aren't new feelings, and it's impossible to like not know that there would have been a legacy of these kinds of experiences historically, but to take what we have now and dive into it is such an exciting and playful thing to do, which is so empowering, I think, and like really fun to play in that. So I'm going to do that. That sounds great. It's, I think, you've mentioned Mae Morris a couple of times, and Mae and MF are like these incredible characters, I suppose, in your book, living people. Maybe I've got lots of things I want to ask you about them, but maybe you could explain who Mae Morris was and who MF was, and why you decided to tell the story of that relationship.
So Mae Morris was the daughter of William and Jane Morris. She worked in the family firm in Morris & Co. from a really young age. So she ran the embroidery department from the age of 23. She also she designed a lot of like the wallpapers, and like we know now about her role in that company more. But her work was kind of absorbed into the family business kind of thing, as was Jane's. And she also had a sister, Jenny, who was also an embroiderer, but had epilepsy, and so which had no treatment at the time. So her kind of career as such was curtailed by that, sadly. So after William Morris died, Mae was kind of released from working in the firm, and she kind of started a life of her own. She was married for a short period of time. That didn't work out, and so by 1910 she'd edited all of William Morris's writing, which was this huge task. Written all these introductions, like they'd fill a whole whole bookshelf, like this huge amount of work. And then she kind of, I found it really interesting that she doesn't kind of stay just working, with the legacy of her with her parents. She kind of makes her own life, and that life is with MF, who was a gender non-conforming land worker who arrived in the Oxfordshire village where the Kelmscott Manor is called, Kelmscott Manor, in where they're like the Morris's summer home. So they had a house in London which is called Kelmscott House, and then the two houses are kind of joined by the River Thames. They didn't own either of them, but eventually Jane bought the house, so they owned this countryside house. May kind of lives between her own house in London and the summer home, this kind of idyllic place. And then in 1924, she just moves there full time. And I was like, why do that if you've got this life of your own? Why suddenly move and stay in this one place? And I think the conclusion I came to after kind of piecing together all these little scraps of their lives was that they wanted to live together, and they decided to live together there, because they were so much more connected to the land there. And they traveled a lot. They went camping, which at the time was kind of unusual. So they did all these trips. They went to Iceland. You know, they were quite adventurous for considering that they weren't like, you know, in their 20s anymore. Like they had this like fantastic middle age together. And I wanted to explore that and how when you know, she's released from the business, like the Morris & Co. business, that, you know, what she does in her daily life and what, you know, her own ideas about life and work and play. So she has this idea of serious work and play work. And serious work is the work you have to do to earn a bit of money. And play work is the work you do with, you know, whether that's writing or sewing or reading or, you know, it's still work, it's still important, you know, it's essential labour. But it's the kind of work you do for yourself and it's freer. And so I wanted to kind of I didn't want to tell the story necessarily, but I wanted to know more about this part of their lives because it felt like that balance between serious work and play work was really what I wanted to achieve as well. So I thought I could learn something from them. And MF also did their own kind of play work in a sense because they scrapbooked, and some of these scrapbooks are at the National Library of Wales, and it kind of they ended up there as part of a kind of after their deaths, you know, with no children, all of these things got kind of dispersed, but these scrapbooks ended up in the library there, and they are kind of how I imagine they're close. I really like the idea of these scraps, and they're really kind of they're closer to how I make things. Like they're kind of chaotic, and they're kind of like, they're not like these really precise in the kind of embroideries that May made, obviously, because like, you know, they're extraordinary and they're so learned and so skilled and so clean and tidy and perfect, you know. I really like these kind of more chaotic this kind of more chaotic way of making things. Without a plan, maybe, and just seeing what happens, or having a plan but it only making sense to you, kind of thing. And this kind of ordering of scraps that I compare to a crazy quilt, or this crazy quilt kind of making, which is a like Victorian way of making quilts, but. Yeah, I like the analogy of a crazy quilt, that, you know, you piece it together however you want to piece it together, and it means something to you, these little precious scraps that you've saved, but they might not mean anything to anybody else. But yeah, that's the idea.
I like the essential work, play work, and then the variation of what that can look like for different people. And I think that this world is so good at giving us chaos that in order to find order in the chaos, like we have to create our own kind of chaos, which is like which is so important. And you cannot make order of this world. It is impossible. So like it makes so much sense that any kind of clear thought pattern or processing or essential work has an element of chaos to it, because that's what it is to live. And especially as like a queer person and like as a like gender non-conforming person, it's interesting to draw the parallels between your experience and also MF's experience. And something I think about a lot is that like way before we even have like this understanding of sexuality, gender identity, whatever that is, like I think as many people as there are on the planet is as many sexualities and gender identities, but we are born into a world, and so was MF, and so are you, and so was I, that we couldn't see ourselves within, right? So from a really very young age, before you even have an understanding of these things, I think you have to pull the world apart and piece it back together so that you make sense within it. And I think that happens really, really early on, and maybe there's play in it. I'm sure there's play in it, but it is an inherently creative act of making sense out of chaos. And so I really feel that from what you're speaking about, but to jump to a scene in the book where you go to May and MF's house, and I've written the page number down here, page 129, if anyone wants to read it. You go into their bedroom, and I wondered if you could say more about this section. I found it really emotional. I actually found it very equally like I really found it very moving that that you went there, but also your anger and your response to like going into this place and not feeling the recognition of what should have been like memorialized and seen within it. But then I was thinking about it, and your act of doing that and going there and having this experience is like the biggest act of memorializing them and changing that room. It's like in the absence of what the curators have not put in there, so becomes your reaction, which then so loudly impresses upon the room what had happened there.
Yeah, so the first piece, and kind of one of like basically the only piece of evidence, if you know, not ephemeral evidence, but material, kind of unquestionable evidence, that they shared a bedroom. There's all this kind of gossip, and it's recorded by people who wrote about May's life, who knew her, that there was gossip in the village that they shared a bedroom, or they shared a bed, which is its own kind of evidence, this kind of ephemeral evidence. Some rumors are true. It's not, it doesn't come out of nowhere, obviously. But I found in the William Morris Gallery in the archive, the reading room there, this tiny little photograph of the back of the house that obviously May's taken, and she's written on the back, it's dated 1924 or 1923, I think, actually. And she's noted all like the flowers growing at the time of the year. It's April, so there's like fritillaries. She's obsessed with the fritillaries that grow around Kelmscott Manor. And she says like which room's the loom room and which room is the sitting room and the guest room, and then one of the windows is our bedroom.
Okay.
So I mean, that's their bedroom. So I was like, this is for me. This note, she wrote this note for me. Obviously it's kind of,
Dear Alice.
As we said earlier, the amount of time we spent on our own, and then we suddenly have to like enter the world. Like, I'm also spending this time with I'm not on my own. I'm with these people who are writing to me from pretty much exactly 100 years ago. Yeah.
I mean, also I like hardcore relate to this. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. So it's our bedroom. So I went to Council Manor a couple of times, but the first time I went, I just wanted to do like the tour, and like, not that they don't like lead you around, but there's lots of volunteers like stationed in the different rooms. It's run by the Society of Antiquaries, which has looked after it for decades. So there are these volunteers that kind of stand in each room and tell you about all the things that are in there, mainly about like, you know, trying to direct you towards, you know, the embroidery that William Morris stitched, because that's got to be exciting, even though it's like nowhere near as exciting as the ones that Jane and May are doing, obviously, whatever. You know, they've got a certain narrative that they want to kind of, you know, what they think you're going to, why you're there, to pay. It's like a pilgrimage to William Morris, basically. So you must be there because that's what you want to know. May's role in the narrative is that she didn't write a proper will after she died. Most of the things in the house, in terms of numbers, they were sold in this auction that was at the house. So her role in the narrative is that like it's her fault that there's not more things in the house. She's also, the narrative is that the current curators, which I think is important too, that she is the kind of first curator of the house. So she decided what would be kept in the house. So she kind of designed like what would remain. And she was obviously looking after her family's legacy. It was like her role. But she kind of curated herself out of it in a way, because there's not a lot of things that relate to her. You know, there's a few things, but really it's like William Morris's room is preserved, bedroom is preserved, Jane Morris's bedroom is preserved, the studio where Rossetti did his whatever he was doing, that's preserved. So, you know, like, it's like, you know, you know, and all the sitting rooms are like as they would have been roughly when they were there. But our bedroom, like the bedroom that May and MF shared, is not in any way reconstructed or present, and it's actually now the temporary gallery space. So I kind of write about going around the house, encountering all these stories about them, and then, you know, trying to find our bedroom and then not really being able to find it within the house, going outside and seeing, you know, comparing the what it is now and then the photo. So locating our bedroom and realising, oh, it's actually not a bedroom at all. It's and it was actually, at the time, I don't know if it is any currently, so don't try and, I don't know, you have to check if it's still this exhibition, but the temporary exhibition was called Behind Closed Doors. And on the way back, on the train back, I was like, I still couldn't really like map. I was like struggling to map like the two together. Like, where is this bedroom? It's so confusing. Like, where's the door to the bedroom? And I kind of did this, you know, they do these like 360 tours, so you can look at the house online kind of thing. So I was like trying to find where the door would be to the bedroom, and obviously it's a closed door, like you can't go in through that way. You know, you go through a different entrance to get to it. So it was literally behind closed doors, but then, you know, there's it's not even a bedroom.
It's so interesting. I think there's meaning in everything, right? So this to me makes complete sense. Behind closed doors, obviously, the door is like closed. You cannot get behind the door. There is the idea of it being a temporary exhibition in the place that was so permanent for them is also such a wider comment on their relationship and the experience of that relationship at that period of time in history. The idea that it was there's an exhibition that when you went there that was called Behind Closed Doors, and that you're like this you're this like person who is going there to prise open that door, and you have done that, and you have done that in the book, and their bedroom is no longer behind closed doors. It might not be honoured in that space, but there is no way that I would go to their house and not see their bedroom now. So you have completely excavated the concrete, you have daylighted their relationship and their bedroom, which is really important, and you've done that because it was a necessity to you to pull it out of the light. So thank you. I have so many questions for you, and I think I've asked you like 4.
They are in the what's also funny is when the curators have like they have put MF and May and their life together. They do kind of tell the story, but it's in this outbuilding.
Oh yes, I remember.
On the way out, I just remembered. It's like, and it's like, I think it's where like his little stable, like where a horse would be or something. I don't really know. But like they've done this little kind of display, which is nice, but it's like, you know, pictures of them and their animals on these boards. But it's kind of, it's gestural, I guess. And there is also, you know, like we want to see, you know, our own histories. But I think for the audience that they are expecting to have it to the house, like I don't think like queering the house is in that sense important to them. It's like keeping it kind of on the edge, on the outside, and it's literally an outbuilding. So,
which is how we live in this world, to a constant state of erasure and being on the outbuilding.
Even in the attempt to include it as part of the story, it's outside, and it's just that they had some cats and they shared, you know, like they had a dog and a cat and they love their animals, and it's outside in the stable. There's no kind of attempt to think about what their life actually was like.
And that is done so often to our narratives, because people are so careful of like not wanting to state something that they end up silencing it completely. And I think that's actually, I will use the word, but I think that can be a really violent act, and it's such a subtle and quiet one. I really liked the idea of backstitching that you have within the book, and it made me think about reflecting, and it made me think about how you cannot go forward without going back. And it feels like it's doing something bigger in the book than just describing one stitch. And you talk a lot about protest through embroidery and stitching in the book. And so it's both of those two things combined makes me think about the importance in going back before we can go forward. And I think a lot of what, and I don't mean like regressing, I think a lot of what you've done in the book is, and we've just been talking about it, is to go back to see and build strength from what you can find in what you're curious about in your research, in order to like move forward in this idea of becoming. So yeah, I wondered what your thoughts are on that.
For sure. I think it's very beautifully put. I'm thinking a lot about my mum in this, because in the book I say that, you know, I was thinking about Jane. My mum is also called Jane. Yeah. And from the beginning I was thinking about, you know, about my mum in this. She's also, you know, this is kind of what she does too. She looks back to queer histories in her work and in her life, and she also, you know, is a sewer. She makes banners and quilts and these things to kind of voice injustice in the queer community. And she's always looking back. And she also taught me backstitch, which I really, really remember as a child. Like, you know, why would we go backwards to make a new stitch? You know, it's, you know, you can stitch forward. You can do like a running stitch, and that it's much quicker to just, you know, go forwards. in and out forwards. But to go backwards to make a new stitch, it actually makes this much stronger line. And so I was thinking about that. And, you know, I think Heather Love also wrote this book called Feeling Backwards, which is like this kind of queer feeling. Like we feel backwards. We feel like we're turned the wrong way. And we have these like strong attachments to the past and to lost things in the past that she calls kind of bad attachments, and that, you know, it's important to stay with those unresolved feelings of backwardsness, to not resolve it, to not try and, you know, that kind of like melancholy, just kind of stay with that melancholy rather than try and turning shame into pride, like facing the other way. Like we do need to stay with those backwards feelings so that we can recognize the damage that's being done in the present. And I think that this is really important, is that, you know, to look, you know, to imagine a future, we have to think about the past, but not in a way to make everything all neat and tidy and wrap it up. It's like we need to stay with the backwardsness. So we need to, that's kind of what backstitch kind of means to me, that it isn't just, and I did feel like this for a long time when I was writing, that, you know, why am I looking backwards? Like, I need to just be imagining my future, and I need to be looking forwards, and I like, or like be in the present, you know, like that's always like that thing is like, you know, be in the now. Like, why are you, like, even when I was like at Kelmscott Manor, like, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I so sad about this? Like, why do I care so much? And actually it's like staying with that feeling of like I care because there's something wrong, and we need to like not just kind of go, you know, explore the past in order to like move on from it. It's, you know, that doesn't work. It wouldn't work like that. And I think with Section 28, you know, that's, and you know, that's how we grew up. We, you know, our schooling is pretty much the exact dates of when Section 28 was like in place. And, you know, my mum as a queer person remembers, you know, all the lesbian mothers being absolutely terrified that their children were going to get taken away. And it was happening. And I think she's a single parent. And it's like, you know, this was a real agony at the time. And, you know, that hasn't been resolved because we're in a version of it now where it feels like, you know, it feels like that again. And that's that pain and that those backwards feelings are there for a reason. It's because we need to kind of stay with them rather than move on from them.
Yeah, completely agree. I also, what you're saying is making me think about how we are only made up of everything that has happened to us. And we are never the same person in one moment to the next, right? Because we're constantly evolving and shaping and becoming and changing. But we are just as much like here in the present as we are in the past, as we will be in the future. And it's this like concept of queer time, right, which has to involve grief and loss and euphoria and elation. And there's something beautiful, I think, in being able to open yourself up to hold all of the complexities of those things in moment, because that is really what it feels like to be alive and to live. And I think that's, I like hear that in what you're saying. And there is no world in which we can live where you don't go into that room and feel angry at the absence there, because that is a very present feeling and experience, and it should be should be held in that way. You've mentioned your mum there, like, and she's, in this book. But one of the things that I found really made me very angry when I was reading the book was the benefits assessment that happened, and how she said she was an embroiderer, which is such a beautiful statement. And then that was used as evidence against her. And it made me think, which also links to the weeds, because it's the same thing that's done to, people living with disabilities, that how she, in that statement, was being told that she couldn't, creative practices weren't for her, right? And that play doesn't count as real participation, and if she does that, then she's not considered, or it invalidates her when it so clearly is a survival method. And anyway, I just want to acknowledge that, and it feels like I know that you have your first book and everything that you go into in that, but then there's this continual dialogue of also this inheritance that you have from your mum, right?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, or maybe it was not a couple of years, I think it was just last year actually, she was assessed for personal independent payments, or PIP as it's known, and in order to get the higher rate of benefit, so what she needs as a disabled person with a chronic illness that she's had for 30 years, in order to get that that higher rate, you have to score 3s and 4s in this assessment. Anyway, she didn't score any 3s and 4s, and the one that she would score highly on is around dexterity and mobility. But because she said she could sew, that that was determined by the assessor that, she had enough dexterity to cook herself a meal, and therefore she didn't qualify for this higher rate. So this thing that was actually this really kind of they're just looking for something to score you down, and it was also around the time where in the same way that queer rights are in jeopardy, just the human rights of disabled people are also, we are going backwards in all these different senses. The future does not look better for us in that sense. But because she had this, she basically said, all I can do is I can go to a sewing group once a month. This is all I can do. And to her, that meant this is, I'm not doing as much as I want to be doing. I'm not living my life. And that was used against her effectively. And I think we can only kind of take from that sewing is not something that's necessary. It's not, you don't need to do it, but it also proves that you can do something else and that you can earn money and you can go to work, which is obviously not something that she can do. And that, she would like to be able to do that. She wants to work for her, she wants to do her work, and she's an incredible academic, and, she would be able to if she had more, more care in place, but she doesn't. So it's this trap basically. But it's just fueled her more. Her activism, capital A, small a, small a. She that is how she lives. For me, writing the book was, it's about that, the daily practice of resisting, and it's also embroidery, these kind of stitches, looping chain stitches and back stitches. These are all these kind of useful metaphors for resistance, and like a kind of misuse of time, like queer time and crip time is, you know, this looping, bended kind of time. That is flexible time, that adapts to bodies, that, you know, is useful to us. But you know, writing the book, I was also very aware of the limits to, you know, embroidery as resistance. I mean, yeah, it has a function, but and there is a really strong history of it in Palestine and you know, in Northern America, in South America, in Chile, in all these places, you know, embroidery has been used as a form of resistance, as a political act. We see it now with you know, banners and quilts, like, you know, the UK AIDS quilt being this kind of way of publicly performing and staying with grief and staying with these bad attachments and staying with this these painful experiences. But that, you know, it only goes so far. There is also the kind of the action that is the capital A activism that is also, you know, really necessary. So it's not to say like one or the other, but yeah, yeah.
It's never one or the other. It's a collective movement, and it's symbiotic. You cannot have one like lichen, right? You cannot have one without the other, and the two together are what make progress happen, and that involves a backstitching from both angles, which leads me probably nicely to like my last question. So I thought a lot about legacy reading this book and the work our generation is doing to recover and to reclaim our own histories for those that are living, for those that we've lost, and for those that aren't yet here. And so I wanted to know, what does legacy mean to you? I guess, is it to live always with the idea that we allow a rewrite and a revision?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot about this because, you know, in the same time I'm looking to past queer lives, I'm also using all this work that, you know, that other writers and other, you know, in like theorists or whatever, that has been done already. And I don't think the idea of like building on it or, you know, adding to it is actually, you know, like that doesn't make sense in relation to what we've been talking about. And it's really about revision and revising. And that's what they kind of taught us, you know, thinking about like Adrian Reish or, you know, like, you know, revision is, you know, then, yeah, that's, yeah, the revising and the going back and the undoing and the redoing is that's what really maps onto this idea of unpicking old embroideries to see how they were made. Like that's kind of how you can learn how to do something, but then you do it yourself and you do it your own way, and you're not adding so much as redoing or remaking something. And so I guess, yeah, I think we have to do that to kind of show that we're not building up or moving on. We're not. It's not about like developing something in a linear way. It's kind of, for me, it's about demonstrating that we can keep going back and revising. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a lovely place to end. Thank you, Alice. This has been so fascinating. I feel like I want to go back to the beginning of the book and read it all over again and unravel.
Thank you so much for your wonderful questions and conversation. Really lovely.
I think one of the things in the interview with Alice that struck me so much was that thing about visiting the house and like trying to find the bedroom, like our bedroom. that
on the
was just
photo,
the way that it was labelled on the photo, our bedroom, and then like now in the way that the house is, or at least when Alice visited it, that it was like a temporary exhibition space, and you couldn't go through the door and stuff like that. And it wasn't noted that it was like May and MF's bedroom. So I think that is just such a visual image, and I can imagine. Yeah, I guess like being a writer myself, going there and having the experience that Alice had of being like, on the one hand, these are people that I care about and that I'm trying to resurrect their history and their stories and tell the stories in a new way. And also, at the same time, as a writer being like, this is my story. Like, this is a great story. This is a great way in to like explain this issue and talk about this issue. It's a moment. And so like, it's kind of, although it's kind of shitty thing to do to May and MF, it's also on behalf of the like house and museum. It's a sort of gift that that decision has given the writer, Alice in this case, to like use that as a metaphor for the whole thing. So yeah, that was just one thing that really stuck out to me in the interview.
Yeah, and they have such a beautiful way of writing and thinking and seeing. I actually bumped into Alice at Robin. I'm wearing some Robin merch from the Sexistential tour, which was amazing.
Great.
Yeah, it was great. But guess what?
What?
I'm going on holiday, Adam.
Oh, great. That's your next thing.
It's my turn.
Yes,
my turn to...
great.
I'm going to Greece with my friends. Yeah, Katie, Anna and Imi. I can't wait.
Oh, lovely.
It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
A week in the sun.
Take your sun cream.
I will.
Okay.
I will. Factor 30, if not 50.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of The Logbooks. Thank you always for listening, for rating and reviewing, and following us on Instagram, or signing up to the Aunt Nell newsletter, all of that good stuff.
And stay in touch.
Yeah.
Like, let us know what you think, what you want to hear. We really love hearing from listeners.
Yeah. So speak to you soon. The Logbooks is an Aunt Nell production.
It is hosted and produced by Tash Walker and Adam Zmith.
The assistant producer is Mia Campbell. Music from Soundstripe.
Original artwork by Natalie Doto.
With thanks to the dreamboats at Acast.
There are moments that reveal who we are and who we're meant to become. For those born to lead, such moments call for a vehicle of equal distinction. Dynamic by design, uncompromising in execution, the Range Rover Sport was engineered for those rare individuals who demand the world and possess the conviction to claim it. When your time to lead arrives, you need a vehicle that rises to meet it. The Range Rover Sport. Exclusive offers available now. Explore further at rangerover.com.
Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. That's why a State Farm agent is there to help you choose a coverage option that's right for you. Whether you're getting a new house, car, boat, or RV, helping protect it is important. And State Farm is there to help you choose the coverage you need. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app. And with so many coverage options, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. So you can continue to focus on what's most important to you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The youth mental health crisis is growing, and social media is a major driver. Kids are spending up to 9 hours a day on screens, often unsupervised, and studies show a direct link to anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts. That's where Gab comes in. Gab offers safer phones and watches for kids with no social media, tailored to every age, offering the right tech at the right time, or tech in steps. From GPS tracking-enabled watches for younger kids to phones with parent-enabled apps for teens, each device allows kids to more safely grow their independence. Visit gab.com/getgab and use code GETGAB for an exclusive offer. That's GAB.com/getgab. Gab, tech in steps, independence for them, peace of mind for parents.